welcome everybody. My name is Chiara Davalli, and I am a senior project leader at EBN, the European Business Innovation Center Network. So if you don't mind, I would ask you all to add next to your name in this on the Zoom platform the organization you represent, so we know who's in this virtual room. And then, of course, I would invite you to use the chat to say who you are, where are you connecting from, and of course, using this chat during the whole session to raise questions or share comments, ideas with the group. We'll monitor the chat and we'll take questions and comments either at the end of each presentation or at the end of the session for small Q&A moments. Great. Okay, so as you know, this is the second webinar Better Incubation is organizing to better understand the Social Economy Action Plan. Back in May, we organized again with DG Employment and DG Grow a session which was mainly aimed at really understanding the plan and its implementation paths, and the way, of course, business support organizations could contribute to it. Since then, we received some requests to also dig into more the funding instruments that support the implementation of the Social Economy Action Plan. And that's why we are here today. And then we thought to add also another piece of information, the one about the Competence Centers for Social Innovation, and understand what they are, what they do, and how BSOs can connect with these national realities. So that's the objective of today, and I'm happy to count on the contribution of Dana Verbal, Risto Raivio, and Gronia Smith, who will respectively talk about the funding instruments related to social economy, the Competence Centers for Social Innovation, and then we'll take a concrete case study, the one of FUSE, one of the consortia that they bring together for member states and for Competence Centers for Social Innovation, namely from Ireland, Cyprus, Portugal, and Bulgaria. And I'm happy to see that there are some EBN members from these countries. So I hope it will be very useful and interesting to see this very concrete example. I promise to be very short, but just wanted to let you know that indeed this webinar is organized by EBN on behalf of the Better Incubation initiative. Most likely you already know about the Better Incubation, so it's a 2-year funded project aimed at really offering business support organizations capacity building, networking opportunity to expand their outreach to inclusive and social entrepreneurship. We have been working for 2 years with members of the 3 networks you see here on the screen, EBN, EVPA, and Impact Hub, to really research, test, and think about inclusive practices on incubation and business support services. So to really offer quality support to the so-called underrepresented entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurs that belong to vulnerable groups, which in our specific case were identified as women, people with disabilities, migrants and refugees, seniors, and youth. The overall objective of these 2 years of work was to kickstart an ecosystem change, bringing incubation and business support services closer to the whole society. So to promote entrepreneurship and self-employment as means to create jobs, develop skills, and give unemployed and vulnerable people an opportunity to fully participate in society and the economy. We did it by enabling, let's say, a program over 4 main chapters: capacity building for business support organizations, the so-called cultural paradigm shift, so connecting with the regional, national, and European ecosystems in order to really rethink the way we support entrepreneurship, so to be more inclusive and impact oriented. We implemented an impact assessment framework for inclusive incubation programs tailored to the different target groups to understand their needs and see the value generated by the services offered in the framework of the better incubation, and of course the creation of new alliances, so going beyond usual partnerships to reach out to the so-called vulnerable groups, and also not only to reach out but also to stay with them throughout the whole incubation journey. Here you see 5 bubbles where we try to summarize with some figures key outputs and outcomes of these 2 years of activities. I was telling you about the 5 target groups to better work on their needs and their strengths, because it's not only about the challenges they face, but also the strengths these groups have and represent. We have been working with 5 communities of practice involving more than 37 members. These representing experts, entrepreneurs, business support organizations, either EU BICs or impact hubs, Caritas representatives. These coming from from 19 countries. With these groups, we have met for 1 year every month for 1.5 hours of online calls. We have collected more than 100 good practices, tools, resources. We have run and processed more than 25 empathy interviews. So empathy interviews are interviews with the target beneficiaries. And to me, the most important facts and figures, we have run 21 incubation pilot programs in 14 countries that involved more than 130 entrepreneurs, would-be entrepreneurs, belonging to the 5 groups I was mentioning before. Learnings from this incredible journey have been captured in the publications you see here: the Better Incubation Best Practices, the Toolkit, the Insights paper, and the Better Incubation Roadmap. They tackle different dimensions, so more pragmatic aspect, how to really design and implement incubation programs that are inclusive and diverse, and the roadmap that is insisting more on the organizational level. So going beyond the programmatic level, helping business support organizations rethinking their strategies, their governance, their communication, their ecosystems, in order to really make an ecosystemic change, or at least to start it. We have run training courses on social entrepreneurship, impact management and measurement, and inclusive entrepreneurship. All materials are available online, and we are now uploading all the videos, edited videos, so you have the juice of all these training courses coming very soon, by the end of this week. I feel comfortable in saying this, on our website. So you can go again through all these training materials and gain benefit from experts' inputs, entrepreneurs' testimonials, BSOs' testimonials and practices. We have run series of events, and let me stress these 15 regional policy workshops where we have been really sharing with 15 regional ecosystems, entrepreneurial ecosystems in Europe, ideas on how to foster and support and promote, of course, social and inclusive entrepreneurship. And of course, everything from the perspective of BSOs, so how BSOs can contribute to this. And 10 days ago, we were in Brussels, also kind of sharing the summary of all these 15 regional policy workshops and reflections coming from the activities I was mentioning before during the EU policy workshop. And again, next week, this time, so in the last issue of the Better Incubation newsletter, you will find the 15 regional manifestos, so summarizing recommendations coming from 15 regions, and the EU policy recommendations shared by the project as a whole. Last but not least, we have just finished the scaling program that saw 3 impact-driven ventures selected through the Better Incubation contest 2022 that have benefited from the support of members of EBN, Impact Hub, and EVPA to scale their impact solutions, impact-driven ventures and solutions to new markets in Europe. So again, if you check the website, you can read their stories and their scaling plans. So here we are with our last live activity. And again, let me remind you to check our website because it's really full of resources. The project itself is ending with the 31st of December this year, but it's, let's say, a formal ending because the 3 networks remain active on the topic, partnering together, scouting for new opportunities to formalize this partnership, but till not formalized, it will keep working as an informal partnership. As this was really an enriching activity and initiative for us as secretariats, but also for the members. So I stop here and hear some of the faces of the Better Incubation initiative when we met back in July in Prague for the closing of the COP's journey. So I stop here with this overview about Better Incubation. So it was good to give you this short summary. Of course, I remain available for anything you might need or want to discuss further. But let's start discussing now the Social Economy Action Plan and more specifically the funding instruments. So I would give the floor to Dana Verbal. I stop sharing my screen.
Okay, thank you, Chiara. And I start sharing my screen. So I have this challenging task of talking about EU funding instruments for the social economy in 10-15 minutes. Please stop me if I go a bit over time. So as you know, because we are placing this in the context of the Social Economy Action Plan, which was adopted more or less 1 year ago, and access to finance was an important pillar of this action plan for the social economy. Access to funding together with business support and support to networks. And the action plan put forward some concrete measures to increase the support for social economy organizations and social enterprises. what is important to bear in mind is that social economy, as you know, is a cross-cutting topic. It touches upon many different policy areas because it can offer solutions to different societal challenges. And for this reason, there isn't a dedicated EU funding program for the social economy. What we have in play instead is a situation where social economy is mainstreamed under different EU funding programs. So I counted about 18 different EU funding programs where social economy can benefit either from dedicated measures or where social economy can benefit indirectly because they are well placed to address the objectives of these programs. So they are all relevant, but I will only manage to talk about 3 of these funding programs today. I will focus on the European Social Fund, the European Regional Development Fund, and the InvestEU. But I included at the end of the presentation a few slides with a list of other programs which are relevant as well. So starting with the European Social Fund, this fund, as you know, has as main objective to promote employment, education and training, and social inclusion. And a big part of the funding, most of the funding, is implemented by member states through national or regional programs. So by national or regional authorities, they have a lot of grant schemes, but sometimes they also use financial instruments to support social economy or social innovation. There are a few examples already existing from the previous period. And social economy is actually very well placed to deliver on all the thematic objectives of the European Social Fund. But we also encourage member states to have dedicated measures and dedicated objectives to support the social economy. And our encouragement is for member states not to use just grants for starting up social economy organizations, but also support for other actors in the ecosystem, like incubators, financial intermediaries, social economy networks. Of course, we cannot, it is finally with the member states, the decision what is best for them and how they want to spend the money, but this is the encouragement we always give them. So it's good that you always follow the calls that are launched by the managing authorities in your countries, because there might also be something relevant for the work that you do. And this time, in this programming period, member states are also encouraged very much to use the European Social Fund to support social innovation. And we know that social economy actually contributes to social innovation, so they can be very well placed to benefit there. Countries have to dedicate at least one priority to social innovation, and they are actually receiving a financial incentive to do that, because the EU co-financing is higher for social innovation activities. So for sure, there we can be sure to say that each country will have some a priority for social innovation in the next programming period. And in addition to this big part of the budget that is implemented by the member states, there is also the employment and social innovation strand that is implemented directly by the European Commission, or sometimes through an intermediary, as my colleague Risto will maybe explain a bit later. This is the case for the transnational cooperation part. We also launch grants that are managed directly by the European Commission to support the development of social enterprise finance markets. And the aim of these grants is actually to accompany financial instruments that are being launched at EU level under the InvestEU program. And I will talk about InvestEU in a bit as well. I move forward to another relevant funding program, which is the European Regional Development Fund. Here, this funding as well can actually be very useful for developing social enterprises and upscaling the impact of social enterprises. There is one specific objective under this funding that concerns the access to quality employment through development of social innovation and infrastructure. And under this specific objectives, countries are encouraged to use the funding also to support business incubators and investment support for self-employment, for SMEs, for social innovation and social entrepreneurship. There is also the possibility of using financial instruments to provide risk capital to startups in a similar manner as it is possible also under the European Social Fund Plus. And there is a focus in this period on the culture and tourism sectors, because these sectors have been disproportionately affected by the COVID pandemic. So the ERDF support is also targeted towards strengthening the capacity of the sectors to drive economic development, but also to drive social innovation. So I'm focusing my presentation on all the things that can be very relevant for the social economy, but of course there are many other priorities that can be relevant as well. I just try to identify the most relevant ones. So I think the idea of financing social innovation in these sectors could finally turn out relevant for the social economy. This funding, similar to the European Social Fund Plus, is implemented by through regional and national authorities. So again, you will have to look out for calls for proposals launched by these authorities. Now moving to the next program, this is the InvestEU, and this is where the Commission has now bundled all the financial products, financial instruments, or non-repayable finance, repayable finance for social enterprises and microfinance. And in addition to this repayable finance instruments, there is available also advisory support in the field of social enterprise finance and microfinance, but also impact investing and social outcomes contracting. The way this funding is delivered is through implementing bodies. The main implementing body is the European Investment Fund. There can also be other bodies. So far, they are the only one. And the advisory support is provided by the European Investment Bank. And the way the interaction between these financial instruments and the grants I mentioned earlier looks like is, you can see it on this slide. So basically the top layer, you see the financial instruments that will be offered under InvestEU. And this include, for example, loan guarantees for social enterprises and microfinance, equity products for investments in social enterprises, capacity building to, this consists in investments in financial intermediaries to build their institutional capacity. And we also have a funded instrument where we provide liquidity to financial intermediaries, usually small intermediaries like microfinance institutions who do not have liquidity. And through this instrument, we enable them to extend more loans to micro enterprises and social enterprises. So all these instruments are implemented by the European Investment Fund at the moment, maybe also other bodies in the future. and they are targeting financial intermediaries who then deliver their support further to the social enterprises. Yes, so this is the offer under InvestEU, but then we also have the grants I mentioned earlier under the Employment and Social Innovation strand of ESF+. So these grants are meant to accompany the financial instruments and to build the social finance markets. We had several rounds of grants so far to develop social finance markets. The last round is coming to an end now, so we have already announced in the action plan that we will continue this kind of support in the future. We also have grants, so-called transaction cost support. They are meant also to support financial intermediaries who make equity investments in social enterprises. And we have just had a call for proposals this year, so new projects are about to start. And we also give operating grants to EU networks that are active on promoting social enterprise finance and microfinance. And maybe the most interesting part for you is the last layer of the slide, this advisory hub. The idea is to offer advisory support to intermediaries, both financial intermediaries, but also support organizations for social enterprises and microfinance. This is implemented by the European Investment Bank under a so-called Social Inclusive Finance Technical Assistance Initiative, where, as I said, the main objective is to provide advisory support to microfinance institutions and social finance providers in order to prepare them for taking up potentially financial instruments under the InvestEU. And let me just check the time because I heard Chiara, so I'll be very fast. Okay. But you can benefit from training, from investment readiness support, from study visits, and these services are open also to support organizations like incubators and accelerators that are planning at some point in the near or medium term to provide also some accompanying financial support to social enterprises. So this could be interesting. At the end of the presentation, you have all the links on how you can find this information and apply for this type of services. And I've included in the presentation 3 slides that I'm not going to present, but you will receive this later on with other with a list of other funding programs that can include some dedicated support for the social economy. You can absolutely be sure to have some dedicated support, for example, after under the single market program. But there are many others as well. I included at the end of the presentation a resource, which is a European funding toolkit for social enterprises and their support organizations. It's a toolkit publication that was developed by the Euclid network, and it all really goes through all the different funding programs and explains how you can apply to them, how they can be relevant for you if you are a support organization for social enterprises. This is the link to their last edition, but I know that they will publish a new one this year or early next year. So this can be a good resource. I just go back to one last slide I wanted to mention. In the action plan, we announced a EU social economy gateway. We are working on setting this up. It will be a website, and the idea is to include on this website information about EU funding programs, so funding opportunities for the social economy, but also EU initiative, resources, guidance documents, best practices, and capacity building opportunities for the social economy. We also plan to include country pages to provide country-specific information. And the reason we are doing is exactly to gather in one place information that is now scattered on different websites of the Commission and of other organizations, and to improve access to this information. So it can be very relevant, I think, both for social economy organizations, but also for support organizations. And we are going to launch this in a first phase in the second quarter of 2023, hopefully this next summer. And then we will complement it over time with more information. Okay, here on the last slide, you will also find information about how to apply to this advisory support I mentioned, the so-called SIFTA, and the InvestEU calls for expressions of interest for financial instruments. So you will have a bit more reading to do after the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you very much for this comprehensive introduction. Indeed, it was quite of a challenge introducing so many instruments, but indeed the objective was to, provide an overview and then offer the opportunity to participants to then go deeper, understanding more about the instruments they deem more relevant for themselves. So thank you very much. Indeed, we will also share the updated version of the toolkit of Euclid as soon as they will announce it, because indeed it's a very nice publication, useful, practical. And yes, we look forward for this EU social economy getaway, which indeed access to information, updated, clear, and accessible information was one of the key messages coming out also from the work we did with the entrepreneurs and the business support organizations in Better Incubation. So looking forward to it. Okay, so thank you very much, Dana. I don't repeat myself, but if you want to share comments or questions, please put them in the chat. We'll take them at the end. And now I would give the floor to Risto Ravio, who will present us the Competence Center for Social Innovation.
Thank you, Chiara. Sorry for the mistake. Today is 13th. But the slides have been otherwise updated a little bit for today. And thank you for this invitation. So I will indeed shortly introduce to the issue of the competence centers for social innovation, national and European competence center for social innovation. But that happens in the context of the ESF+. Dana already mentioned the ESF+ as an important funding mechanism in this area, and that is the context. And just maybe it's useful for you that I remind about the concept of social innovation. It's a concept that has three elements in it. First of all, it is about social, so it's an innovation where the objective, the aim, the reason for innovating something is to address a social issue, a social challenge where new innovative ways are needed. The second notion in that concept is that it always relates to a kind of new social relationship. So the way of doing is new, and it involves a variety of stakeholders. Academics speak about quadruple helix, the triple helix, and you add the civil society into that, and then you come to social innovation in that terms. And the third element is that it actually refers not only to addressing a particular social issue, but by doing that, you also actually aim at let's say, increasing the whole society's capacity to act. So in best case, when you address a social issue, it has a larger societal impact then. And let's go down from here to the next slide. And here, just a kind of starting point, when within the ESF, so ESF, European Social Fund Plus, for this programming period from 2021 to 2027, there is more emphasis on social innovation than what was before. And within this increased and strengthened emphasis, there is also the kind of ambition that we cover the whole life cycle of social innovation. So from the early prompts up to the systemic change, there are different phases. I don't go into the details of these phases, but we really want to cover this whole life cycle of social innovation within the ESF Plus. So let's go to the next slide. And here in this slide, this is about how this nearly 100 billion euros are implemented, as Dana mentioned. And what is blue in this, that refers to the implementation in the member states. As Dana was saying, main part of the ESF Plus is implemented in the member state. It's only not only main part, it is 99%. So if we have 100 billion in the picture, 99 billion is implemented in the member states, and about roughly 1 billion at EU level. Now, this picture in the middle, you have three phases, and this refers to the previous slide when I spoke about life cycle. Here we have simplified that to the three phases in social innovation. So first you create new ideas, new solutions, you experiment that. In the European context, we notably know that there is a need to transnationally further help these ideas and experimentations to get mature for a kind of scaling up and replication. And then finally, indeed, in the best cases, you mainstream them in policies and systems in the member states, and that possibly include reforms in your systems. And so we have specific instruments or specific parts of the ESF Social Innovation Plus, ESF Plus, to addressing these three phases. And so in the first phase, when you are creating these new ideas, solutions, and you are experimenting them, specifically the easy strand of the social innovation is providing funding for that kind of experimentation at EU level. Currently, there is one call for proposal that was open in the spring and is currently in the selection phase. It was in relation to green and digital skills transition. Then in the member states, as Dana mentioned, every member state is now requested to have a dedicated priority on social innovation. And so the priority means it's a block in your program. And so in every country, there is one block at least, maybe more. In some countries, you have more, but at least one block that is specifically addressing social innovation. And typically it focuses on this new ideas creation phase and experimentation phase. Happily, it also sometimes also refers to the and includes elements related to mainstream and replication. I come back to that later. Now, in the middle section, then we have the green pillar there, and this is a new element, what is called ESF Social Innovation Plus. We are a little bit playing with the words here, but we have specifically dedicated 200 million to support this phase of transnational piloting and also the mutual learning that is needed in this context. And so here we have calls for proposals in the picture, and we have a European Competence Center for Social Innovation in the picture. And then if you go right to the mainstreaming and replication, so we don't have an obligation for member states to address this replication and scaling up, but we have explicit reference to that. So member states are reminded that when you are using your ESF plus resources, you might want to dedicate some money for replicating and scaling up what works. Now, we know that supporting social innovation is not only about money, it's also about connecting right stakeholders, building the capacity of right stakeholders. And for that reason, there is a process of creating competence centers for social innovation in the member states and also at the EU level. So you have these green and blue boxes below there. The European Competence Center, I will explain that in the next slide. But in addition to that, there has been now since nearly 2 years projects running which are building competence centers in the member states. And 24 member states are concretely involved in this, or actually 25 are involved, but 24 are really building the competence center now currently. And we will come back to that. So next slide. So about this European level competence center, the green box in this. So in the European, at the European level, we have this specific 200 million available for helping the scaling up and replication of social innovation. About 150 million will be used for grants for calls for proposals at EU level. The first one is coming up possibly this week, focusing on this ALMA initiative, that is the transnational mobility scheme for young people not in education or training, and which later on we hope that all member states will implement that under shared management under the ESF plus resources, but we will help them to test and pilot the implementation of ALMA. This as an example of the grants scheme of this ESF Social Innovation Plus. And then indeed, we are building now a European Competence Center for Social Innovation with tasks related to mutual learning, awareness raising, data and knowledge work, and also networking. And all these both work streams are implemented now by the by the Lithuanian ESF agency, ESFA, which has been dedicated, entrusted by the Commission to implement this initiative. Okay, let's go further then. Now, we are building national competence centers are currently being built up in the member states, and there is a European competence center now built by ESFA gradually. And here you just have the comparison between these two. So they have very similar tasks. The difference is that one is doing that at the European level, and the others are doing that country specifically in their countries. Although they of course also are connected to transnational work at the EU level. So let's go further on, and we look more specifically about the national competence centers, what is happening now. As I said, there are 6 projects, transnational projects, which have been running up since nearly 2 years or 1.5 years now, and they cover 25 countries. UK is still in because that was from the previous programming period, and then you have 24 European Union countries, from which Croatia is in parentheses, because Croatia is a kind of associate member of one of the consortia, but not really currently yet building the competence center. And if you look at this consortia, you will then, if you count everything, you will find out that Luxembourg, Netherlands, and Malta are currently not involved. And you will see from this picture that there is a nice variety of different kind of stakeholders involved in these consortia. Now, I don't go further details about them. You will have later on in this session example from the Fuse consortium, what is concretely happening in that. Let's go to the next slide then. And this is just as an example that when you go to the website for which I will give the link in the next slide, you will also find kind of fact sheets of all these consortia. And this is just an example of one part of one of the fact sheets. It is about consortia called Puikasus, and you see you will have the national contact persons there. And so if you want to know more about the state of play, what is happening currently in Estonia or in Spain or whatever, find the consortium here. Spain would be covered, and contact the people mentioned here, and then you will learn more about the state of play. So they are paid for being contacted, so do it. And then let's go to the next slide. Here are just the two links. So the upper link leads to the website of the ESF Plus, the section specifically focusing on social innovation. And under that section, you will find the National Competence Centers information. The other website is for ESFA, ESFA's website, and the English version of that. For example, the future call for proposal on ALMA will be published on that website. Later on, when ESFA will really get everything up and running, and I'm really now referring to the implementation phase which started 1 month ago. So the contract with ESFA was signed about a month ago, so they are in the early phase. Later on, there will be also a dedicated website to this initiative only. And so, but this, I don't have you the address yet. But thank you. I would like to end here because there is still another presentation coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Risto. Thank you very much for this overview about the competence centers for social innovation. And actually, there are some questions. I suggest we go ahead with the next presentation first, and then we take the two questions. They are in the chat, so I don't know if in the meantime you want to answer these questions, but one is how to make sure national, regional priorities are aligned with the EU concepts and understanding of social innovation. And another question, it was more about indeed where to find information about the national competence centers. You just gave the information, and then Daisy actually now we are going to hear about the Fuse consortium where Bulgaria is also involved. So I think even more specific for you. I don't know, Risto, maybe you want to already answer this question about the complexity and transversality of competence.
I can, yes. So this is a good question, and basically the process works in this way that within the ESF regulation, there is a definition of the concept. So what social innovation means when ESF money is implemented and used, and it is definition for that purpose. And so when we have asked member states to make this dedicated priority on social innovation, they present this priority in the program that they send for Commission for approval. And indeed, it is verified that what is proposed under this type of social innovation dedicated priority, that it is aligned and it is within the concept. There is still a big variety because the concept leaves a lot of flexibility, but every time we have colleagues in charge of particular countries, they are looking at these dedicated priorities and verifying whether it's aligned with the social innovation concept as defined in the ESF Plus regulation. Sometimes they are consulting us. I work in the coordination unit of the ESF plus, and myself with some colleagues, we are more hands-on on social innovation, and so colleagues in the, let's say, country units are sometimes asking our advice about specific elements, whether this would fit in or not, and then we try to clarify the issue. So this is the process how it works. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Risto. Okay, so Gronia, I would give you the floor. So great.
Thank you. Okay. Can you see that screen okay? Perfect. Okay, good morning everyone, and thank you, Chiara, for the opportunity to present today. My name is Gronia Smith, and I work with Genio, an NGO based in Ireland, and we work at scaling social innovation both nationally and across Europe. Just to say, we're in partnership with another organisation, Rethink Ireland. They're based in Ireland as well, and they are the lead coordinator on the FUSE project. Also, just to say, Vera Baraccio, my colleague from Portugal, was due to be on this call this morning, but unfortunately has had some storm damage done in Lisbon this morning, so she has no electricity, so she's unable to join us. So I will give you a snapshot of the FUSE project, and then kind of focus in on where Ireland is at in terms of establishing the National Competence Centre. I'm conscious of time, so I will, if I'm speeding through fast, I know Chiara said the slides will be made available later, but I'll try and give a quick whirlwind through. Yes, so as Ray mentioned, we're one of 4 countries, so Ireland, Portugal, Cyprus and Bulgaria, and you can see the range of different organisations that are involved in that. We are also members of the EDPA and the Euclid network as well, just to kind of to put that in context. The FUSE Consortium has an advisory committee, which is made up of 2 representatives from each of the 4 countries, and they span across everything from governmental, ministerials to academia and private philanthropy, private ventures. So we have quite a good broad range of advisory members sitting on our committee, and they advise and guide us as we go along our journey of establishing competence centres. As Risto mentioned, this quadruple helix, so we work under the 4 axes of academia, public sector, civil society and private industry, looking at trying to improve capacity building, networking and transnational exchange, all under the remit of social innovation. In terms of what's common trends and challenges across the 4 countries in the FUSE project, very obvious ones are looking at trying to build a common framework for social innovation, looking at strengthening capacity building within the social innovation ecosystem. And what are trends, but also probably the biggest challenges, are looking at innovative finance for impact and impact measurement. These are 2 areas I'll come back to shortly, where while they are a trend, it's also a challenge, and probably our biggest challenge. Some of the focus of the FUSE project, we have 5 main deliverables that we like to look at. So one is looking at mapping the social innovation ecosystem in each of the member states. So we all did that over the last year or so. We mapped the system. We are targeted with developing a blueprint for a strategy and action plan for each of the member states. We're looking at developing a shared support guide on implementing ESF plus funding. We have a capacity building program that started over a year ago and is continuing, and they have been open. I'll come back to that in a second, but the capacity building program has been running and will continue to run until March, April of 2023. And lastly, we were looking at identifying and showcasing social innovations with high potential to scale. So the focus really is on scaling as opposed to startup. And in order to do that, we have developed a validation tool to assist us in identifying those innovations. In terms of the capacity building program, I've already mentioned this. So we have a wide variety of different programs and modules that we've been running over the last year. I won't go into them, they're just there, but as I said, they are continuing then into next year. Some of these have been just for the 4 countries within FUSE, but others have been opened up to other member states, the other 6 consortia or 5 consortia as well, to access. Again, echoing the principles of what Risto mentioned, the functions of the National Competence Centre is looking at empowering the social innovation ecosystem, sharing the knowledge and learning nationally and transnationally, and collaborating with other organisations to identify synergies. Just in terms of, so where we're at the stage now at the moment, each of the 4 countries have draft versions of a blueprint for a strategy. So just to let you know where Bulgaria is at, I know we have a Bulgarian partner on the call this morning. So they have 5 areas they want to focus on, looking at research and mapping, so identifying what's happening in the ecosystem in terms of evidence-based practice and having some form of a map of the players involved in the ecosystem. They are going to focus on networking and publicity, both for networking amongst innovations on the ground, incubators, intermediaries, right up to government level. They want to look at developing an impact measurement toolbox to inform and help with research and mapping. Capacity building, again, looking on exchanging knowledge both locally and internationally. And the 5th area they want to focus on is on advocacy and financial orientation. In terms of Cyprus, they have 3 areas they want to focus on with various actions underneath them. So looking at creating a positive entrepreneurial environment. And what's interesting within this, they want to look at establishing an institute of social entrepreneurship in Cyprus. They want to look at how they can review various financial and tax incentives to support funding of social innovation. In terms of their social entrepreneurship culture, they want to raise awareness amongst all innovators, both public, private, civil society, academia, etc. And they've planned a load of various campaigns and public events to promote that, both in the education system right through and having information points, etc. And the 3rd leg of their blueprint is looking at financial resources. So how can they look to support startups, how they can look at maybe scaling and looking at variety of financial instruments. So that's just a very quick snapshot of Cyprus and Bulgaria. Just to focus in on Ireland, so where we're at the moment, we developed a website or a hub called Cora. It's an Irish word for journey. So this is the Irish dimension of the Fuse project. And as I mentioned earlier, Genio are in partnership with We Think Ireland. So over the last year or 2, we developed an advisory consultative committee, and this is made up of a variety of different innovators and incubators from academia to LCDs, so local community development projects, to privates, etc. So we've quite a good mix of actors involved in our advisory committee. I'll come back to them in terms of their role that they have played in informing the development of our blueprint. We also have a steering committee, and this was quite important for us to set up because, interestingly, Ireland, so we kind of have a bit of a split approach. So the Department of Further and Higher Education are our ESF managing authority, but the Department of Rural and Community Development have taken on the responsibility of developing a social innovation strategy. So they have part funded the Fuse project and are supporting us on developing the innovation strategy. So we meet with them regularly as well in terms of giving them updates and getting their advice and support. So when we did a mapping of the Irish ecosystem, we developed and came up with some strengths and weaknesses. I know the weaknesses look like there's more weaknesses than strengths, but some of them overlap. In terms of our strengths, we have quite a good access to very key individuals, both in the public sector, private sector, to support innovation, social innovation within Ireland. There's a lot of really good grassroots level social innovation happening. And Irish society is very open and responsible. They've got a very good sense of civic responsibility and civic duty in order to address social challenges. And there are some supports to support social innovation, but they're at the very, very early stages. So in terms of the flip side of what the weaknesses are, in terms of funding from government, sometimes there's a tendency that it's quite bureaucratic and it's quite an administrative burden, especially for small innovations trying to set up. They find that the government funding and the regulations that go with it are quite restrictive or certainly a burden. There is a tendency for some of our government agencies to work in a silo approach. So while we have various government departments targeting social innovation, they tend to work in a silo approach. We have a scarcity of mechanisms for impact investment. We don't really have much experience of impact bonds, social impact bonds in Ireland in terms of social innovation. We tend towards more either government funds or small grants or philanthropic funding. So that's definitely a weak point within Ireland, is our financial experimentation. And then the other one was looking at development of long-term and strategic mechanisms to really support innovation. As I said, the focus tends to be on early startups, not necessarily on scaling. So in terms of development of the blueprint, just some very important key aspects. This is very much a bottom-up approach. So while our government department are supportive of us, they have kind of taken a step back to let us really get a very good grounded bottom-up approach. So all the key stakeholders that I mentioned that are on advisory committees and others have informed this blueprint. It is research informed, so we have looked at other practices that's happening perhaps in France, in the AVIS project, and in Portugal. They have some kind of good, I suppose, examples of how to set up an innovations or a competence center. So we have looked at them for some of that practice. We've done a massive amount of iterative feedback loops. So we'll develop a certain stage of the blueprint and go back to our partners and to our advisory committee and get feedback. So there's certainly been involved along the way. The main audience, obviously, of the blueprint is our policymakers. And it's really what we're aiming to do is to develop a set of specific recommendations on the development of a strategy for social innovation in establishing a national competence centre in Ireland. So this is what this is where we're at the moment. We have 4 axes with 12 actions. So the first action we want to look at in this strategy is looking at developing a common understanding and raising awareness of social innovation in Ireland, having a unified approach, while even though that can be quite controversial in some ways, having a unified approach, but having some general core principles that we adhere to. In terms of developing an institutional and policy framework, we really want to have cross-department collaboration and with the ultimate aim of developing a strategy policy on social innovation. In terms of funding and investment, again, I've mentioned this, we want to look at financial experimentation and multi-annual funding. This is not something that happened in Ireland in terms of our funding streams. It's not usually multi-annual, so we want to look at addressing to see if that could happen in terms of addressing social innovation. And the last one is looking at measuring impact. So developing a framework and that we could look at how we can measure the impact of all the social innovations that's happening there and to ensure that they align with the sustainable development goals. So that's what the core elements of our blueprint looks like, and that will be finalized hopefully by the end of or by early next year. So we'll hope to have, we're kind of in a second iteration of it now with the plan of having a final proof of it by March of next year. Just so to say that the blueprint, while there are 4 areas, they are holistic and they do overlap across the different areas, the actions, so to ensure that it is a holistic and robust document. So that's a very quick whirlwind of where Ireland's at. As I said, we plan to have that submitted to government by March of next year. I'm going to make an attempt at giving you an insight onto Portugal's situation. Unfortunately, that Vera can't be here. So where Portugal are at, they have obviously established in 2014 in terms of looking at social innovation and impact and social investment. So they have, over the years, have invested over 150 million euro under the ESF fund. They've had 4 different instruments that they were targeting, working with social innovation projects, and they've developed many partnerships with many social investors. So just a bit of a breakdown of that funding, where it's at. So they received over nearly just 700 applications have been approved for funding. 101 million of that has gone into actual funding, with 51 million going into social investment. As you can see, they've engaged with a variety of organizations, over 477, 843 social investors, with over 1.4 million people impacted. So quite a lot of work has happened over the 6 years. In terms of their development going forward, they have also a huge number of social innovation incubators that they've linked in with. And again, similar to Ireland, they have been really, really central and crucial in informing their strategy, which I'll come to now. So you can see the variety there that has dispersed right over Portugal. Their advisory committee, again, is quite widespread and diverse in terms of supporting and advising them on their progress. So their blueprint snapshot, so this is their 2020, well, it's for 2022, but until 2030, their impact. So they have 5 objectives and targets with 4 main areas and 14 recommendations on that. Their aim, I suppose, and vision is that Portugal becomes an international reference or European hub for social innovation. And they really want to foster development of the effectiveness of social innovation in addressing social challenges. These are the areas that they want to target. So looking at ecosystem builder, how they can strengthen so Portugal social innovation as the reference entity in Portugal, and you can see the recommendations there. They want to look at expanding competences. They want to look at fostering partnerships and looking at simplifying costs. In terms of social innovation promoters, their recommendations are looking at developing new promoters. If there's new promoters out there, getting them on board, supporting them, and strengthening the capacity building of these promoters. The public sector, so they have two objectives within the public sector, was looking at improving the regulatory changes to the current policy. The second objective is looking at additional budgets to support social outcomes contracting, and you can see the list of recommendations there that they want to implement. And the final one is looking at social investors, so looking at trying to mobilize more investors to increase the amount of investment in Portugal. So they have a good ambitious target, but one no doubt I'm sure they'll meet with 1,700 social investors with an additional extra 200 million. So that's their aim for 2030. So yeah, that is a very quick snapshot. Apologies if I've flown through that, but I wanted to make sure I got through on time to allow some time for conversation or discussion or questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Gronia. Actually, you told us a lot of very interesting things. Maybe I just wanted to, I don't know if there is any question or comment for Gronia, please do so about the FUSE project, about the specific Irish experience. On my side, my comment is maybe to go back to what Risto suggested before. Get in touch with the national competence centers to see if and how business support organizations like EUBICS can contribute to these national blueprints or better to the implementation of these action plans. What we have been observing for a while now, because it's since 2015 we are working with social innovation and how mainstream business support organization can support social innovation in Europe. Well, I think we gathered enough experience and ideas on how we can really contribute also from our side, putting at disposal of the social innovation ecosystems in Europe, the competencies, the expertise and the networks that EUBICS already have and that can also support social innovators. And I'm partially involved in the scaling program of FUSE project. I'm checking some of the social innovations that have been selected by the national units. And I think it's very interesting, and the incubators can also have a say on how we can help, and we can really work together to help these great social innovations really explore and set up in new markets. It's really a mix. What we have been observing is really a mix of competencies, networks that can really leverage the impact of these ventures. So that's a comment, a wish, maybe as Christmas is coming, to see this really ecosystem getting more connected, more and more, really building synergies and building on existing knowledge. So not to reinvent the wheel, but make the most of what already out there. So conscious about the fact that we are already 13 minutes late, I renew the invite to get in touch with Gronia if interested in the FUSE project. You will have access to the presentations of our experts today. Risto had to leave, but I would thank very much Dana again for her introduction to the funding instruments for social economy. And I think I can indeed also renew the invite to get in touch with them in case you need any further information. Yes, indeed, I already see Daisy that would like to get in touch for further information about FUSEM. So I let you exchange the contact details, and then if you need any help, just pass by my mailbox. I'm happy to help. Again, thank you very much, as it is our last session. Thank you all for having been with us. I wish you a lovely winter break, lovely Christmas, Happy New Year. I'm sure 2023 will give us new opportunities to work together. Till then, have a good day and rest of the week.
Well done, Chiara, and thanks for all your help during the year.